Well, good evening and welcome to another edition of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy and joining me again this week, Grapeviney, good evening.
Good evening, Andy. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And also joining us, back by popular demand, Whispering Jack. G'day, Whispering.
Yes, g'day Andy, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. But this show can only go downhill from last week's amazing episode, the interview with the great Alan Jakovich.
Alan who?
I thought you might say that. Grapeviney, have you, how has your week been, your Alan Jakovich-less week been?
Well, more importantly, how's your week been? You were the one who was in the spotlight for 2 days. It was a 2-day story. It was that big. And it was just great to see. And we weren't surprised, really, that it was picked up in the media, obviously on the AFL website and SEN too. So it was just great. And as people have commented on the website, Jakovich couldn't have been better talent. His memory was great on all those incidents. And he was so generous with his time, so it was just great. Still buzzing from it, as I'm sure many Demonlanders are.
Yeah, so we obviously, as you mentioned, we did get picked up by AFL.com and SEN, and it was great. I had my 15 minutes of fame without having my name out there, but it did feel good when it got picked up. I mean, I'm not out there to get fame or anything like that, but it was just nice for the podcast to be recognised for, and in particular Alan Jakovich, because it was all about him. It wasn't about us. We got him there, but it was all about him. He spoke fantastically, and I couldn't have been prouder of what we, of putting that out there. So well done to.
How do we follow up from here?
Well, we don't.
Somehow summons Norm Smith, or the ghost of Norm Smith, perhaps.
Well, if we could possibly summon him via Ouija board and get him to lift the curse, that would certainly be that would certainly beat the Alan Jakovich interview for sure.
Or perhaps, if I may suggest, perhaps all of those thousands of people who are now listening into us could ring in and make a suggestion who they would like to hear on the podcast, and we might be able to invite somebody along among those popular Melbourne personalities of past and present. Perhaps someone like Joseph Gutnick comes to mind.
Well, it's not really a problem of coming up with suggestions on who to have on the show. It's actually getting them on, which can be the problem. So,
If you could interview one person, Whispering Jack, who would it be? One demon personality.
Oh, well, my favourite always was Ronald Dale Barassi, the greatest demon ever. 6 premierships, what a fantastic player. And I was lucky enough to have witnessed him play.
Yeah.
And he was, yes, better than Alan Jakovich for most of his illustrious career.
Well, Ron would certainly be a great person to get, don't know how you'd go about that. I doubt he has any social media out there, but we'll see what we can do with that. If someone does want to join us on the program and you want to talk about anything we're going to talk about, and we're going to do our belated trade week wrap up. Obviously, having Alan Jakovich on last week, we weren't able to get to trade talk, so we are a little bit late on that. But, I think everyone can understand that last week we had to do what we had to do. If you want to join us, 03 9016 3666, 9016 3666, or Skype us, Demonland31. Would love to hear your thoughts on anything we talk about. We'll be talking about Lever, we'll be talking about Watts and Harley Balic. Did we find out how to say his name? Is it Balic or Balic? Grapeviney, did you do your homework?
I've got no idea.
Okay. Well, maybe someone could read us up.
Alan Jakovich.
He might have known that.
He might have known. It could be from that part of the world.
So we might jump into Also, if anyone is listening to this live, we have this going out live on demonland.com. Go to the chat room if you want to have a chat with us and ask questions that way. demonland.com/podcast. So we might jump straight into the pool. We'll go with our first trade of Trade Week, and let's talk about the Jake Lever trade. Now, I wanted to get Jake Lever. I think he's going to be a very handy addition to the team. I put up on Demonland some highlights that Adelaide put out there when it was his 50th game, and he's just a tremendous player, and I think we had to do whatever we could to secure him. But was the price of 2 first-round draft picks too high? I'll throw to you, Grapeviney, first. What are your thoughts on what we had to give up to secure him?
No, look, it would have been preferable, obviously, if it had been a first and second rounder, but really to quibble over the cost of a proven youngster who's got 10 years left in him and who, by all accounts, has the standards and preparation and attitude of a Jack Viney, I can't believe that posters are still quibbling over it. It's like getting a great car and paying an extra couple of $100 than you might otherwise. So I'm not concerned about the price at all.
Whispering Jack, what are your thoughts? Did we go too high? Is the price too high for him?
No, I don't think so. I tend to agree with Grapeviney here. Jake Lever is a player that I think Melbourne was interested in all the way back to even before the 2014 national draft. In 2013, he was already playing for Vic Metro in the National Carnival as an underage player, and I think he may have had a leadership role, and that's how highly thought of he was then as a 16, 17-year-old. And I think Melbourne was interested enough to offer up Jack Tringo for a trade with Richmond all that time ago, so that they could be in a position to draft Lever. And as it turned out, Jack Tringo
failed.
Met the Richmond doctor, and that was history. But we could have had Jake Lever back then. All right, so 3 years down the track, he's basically been trained, matured, spent 50 games, and he's ready for the best part of his career, which could be another 10 years. And I think he was a bargain. And I just think that we have tended at Melbourne to be inured to the fact that we like these early draft picks, but historically we haven't done very well with them. And as we can see, just a few days after we secured Jake Lever, we said goodbye to Jack Watson, got in return a pick 31. So that's an early draft pick that didn't work out. I'm hoping that our number one draft pick of next year is going to be around about 19, so Adelaide are welcome to him. Yes, so I think we did well with Lever, his leadership, his a professional young footballer. He's going to be great.
I tend to agree with both of you. I did really, my wish was that we would get away with the first round and the second round next year. But I just, having a look at his highlights, he's just going to slot so well into that team and really give us that push towards a premiership tilt. So, I think I'll wear it. Our record at the draft table hasn't been great. It's been better in the
Whispering
lately.
Jack's right. Supporters need to cut the umbilical cord to the high draft picks. We're still, some people just can't let go of that. And we've now got a very good young list, and it's time to start getting results now rather than always looking to the draft and the future and the future and the future.
Look, Hawthorn for years had success without having to go to the draft to get that. And I think where we've got to look at is draft smartly in the picks that we've got, and also trade smartly as well in the coming years. So,
Yes, and that sets up for next year. I think we're going to have a tilt at a free agent, because getting a free agent doesn't cost you anything, and we could, if we choose wisely and work on it from a very early stage, attract perhaps a very good free agent who would not come with any price tag, and therefore would be more meaningful than perhaps your pick 15, 16 or whatever that we might have with that first round pick next year. And I know a lot of people have said, oh, it's going to be a great draft next year, and I think that applies to the first... Yeah, super draft, but I think that applies to the players who are going to get drafted in the first 3 or 4, and I'd hate to think that we think we're going to be down there.
Yep.
All right, so that's Jake Lever sewn up. I can't wait to see him get back from... I think he's over in Europe at the moment. I can't wait to see him get back down to the club, put on a Melbourne jumper, and have a proper introduction. I'm sure they'll do an interview and a bit of a package when he comes back. Now, before
one last thing on Lever,
yep.
And it speaks to his character, I think. And we heard Tex,
yes.
Really rubbishing him in the media. But I read that he'd actually called most of his teammates, yep. as in most of the Adelaide list,
yep.
To personally tell them that he was going. And I think that's, that says a lot about his character.
Yeah, he could have just, turned up and gone and gone to the tip and thrown out all his gear and just left. But no, he did ring them before. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up about, they had that photo of Lever in the Melbourne gear, and to me it appeared that he had taken that, while he was away. How did they get Melbourne gear to him so quickly? Did they have gear over there? Did someone maybe give him a package to take with him on the hope that we would that we would actually get the trade deal done, which we obviously did? How did he get into that Melbourne gear? Did he take a photo before he left?
I thought Tim Watson criticised Melbourne for not
rolling him out
of him in the polo top.
Yeah, it's out there. It did happen. It's not fake news.
And that was the day that it was announced.
Yeah,
or the day after.
So, but that's what I want to know. How did that photo eventuate? That's why I want to know the story behind that photo. And maybe one day we'll get to interview Jake Lever and ask him that question.
Well, I think the answer is that they're actually selling Melbourne jumpers and Melbourne gear on the French Riverina. In Saint-Tropez, if you go into any fashion shop, you will get a nice red and blue jumper probably with number 4 on the back.
Well, that's another question. Before we move on to the next player, what number do you think Lever will get? Will he take the number 4, or will he go for a vacant number 8, vacant number 9?
Yep.
Which is the
some prime real estate is available there.
Mm.
Yeah, he'll get a low number, I'm sure.
Well, there's nothing wrong with number 31, but it's had a bit of a curse, I think. So,
yeah,
maybe pick 31 can get number 31.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
And as George on the outer points out, Lever's the only 2017 All-Australian squad player to change clubs over the period, and we've got him. So,
and it doubled our number of All-Australian 2017 inductees. So, well done to us. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Jack Watts. All right. There's a lot to be said about Jack. We all know he's a great bloke. We all know everything he went through with the D's. We know that he has the ability. We've seen it. we haven't seen it consistently, which has been something that's, sort of, for me, that's always been my criticism of him, that he doesn't do it consistently. But I've always stuck up to him, to my non-Melbourne mates, that's saying he'll get there, he'll eventually get there. Now, 2016 was a great example. He had a fantastic year. And beginning of this year was probably not as good as his 2016, but he still showed a lot early on in the year. But injury took him down, and then we know what happened after then. So obviously the coaching staff, well, in particular the coach, didn't want him there for whatever reason. Now, and judging by what we got for him, or what we were willing to accept for him, they wanted to get rid of him at any cost. Now, what can you guys add to that?
Well, you sound like you're being very careful with your words here. Perhaps it's because you might have read some of the 275 pages on the Jack Watts farewell thread on Demonland. I thought an astonishing number of Melbourne supporters were extremely upset that he was leaving. So if you take away the name Jack Watts and you say, well, a player who has played for 9 years at a club, and in those 9 years played 150 games and got 13 Brownlow votes, I don't think you'd get nearly 70% of the supporters saying we shouldn't trade him. It's a bit of a phenomenon, and I don't know whether the club understood how popular Jack Watts was among the supporters, and I'm sure there's a lot of food for thought and discussion among psychologists and analysts at some time in the future about exactly how Jack Watts was revered by so many of the supporters. And I don't think too many other players leaving other clubs could have gotten such emotion-charged feelings.
I agree with you, but do you keep somebody because they're revered by the supporter base? And he's a great bloke. He's the type of guy at every fun day, family day, whatever, he's there taking photos with kids. He'll always talk to, he's not one. Every function I went to, and I spoke to him a couple of times with groups of people, always happy to chat and talk and all that. But do you keep someone because of that, or do you go by their performance and their output and how consistent they are? I mean, I think we want to win a premiership. We want the best players available. And you can argue he is a great player, but are we seeing that week in, week out? And I mean, he's the guy I want kicking the ball in the grand final when the siren's gone, we're 5 points down, he's 50 metres out. But
are you a Port Adelaide supporter?
No, I'm just saying he was that guy. And
right.
But is he the guy that's going to even get us to a grand final? I don't know. I don't think so. So what use is he to take the ball at the grand final if he can't get us there? I don't know. I'm a bit conflicted, but I can see. I understand why he's not there anymore. Grapevine.
Well, Watts said very early on in his career, there's an article in The Age back in probably about 2010 that he wasn't all that bothered by losing, and I think that's probably still the case. And I think probably he's got a certain perspective on life, and he's probably lucky to have this perspective. It's not a perspective that many have. Of seeing the bigger picture and not sweating the small stuff, but I think in elite sport it probably works against him, and I think that 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% difference in sort of attitude and preparation and competitive edge is what's separating him from from the rest of the list in the eyes of the football department.
There was a quote that he made, and it relates to what you just said about that quote in 2010, but just after he got traded, he made a comment about something about football not being his life and not being the main focus. And, like, I don't know. I know someone like Jack Viney. Football is his life. He lives and breathes and eats and drinks it all day, and he plays like it too. So I don't know. Something didn't sit with me right. I know players have to have a life outside of football, but, you know, it is their job, and I don't know. There was something that just rubbed me the wrong way when he said that.
Well, the exact quote was, "Football is not my life."
Yep.
This was from the Herald Sun. Being a good person, treating people with respect and trying to be a kind, welcoming person is more important. I guess it hasn't helped me much in the football industry. And I think he's right. I think the real winners in football are the ones who have the philosophy that football is their life. You know, I respect Jack for all of that, but perhaps it's because of the attitude that football is not his life and that he doesn't put enough into his preparation that finally soured his relationship with the football department. I wouldn't put it down to just the coach, but I think all of the football department. And I want to go back a little bit further, say something like about 14 or 15 years ago, and us Melbourne supporters had a lot of fun with a word that Neil Danaher used at one stage. His catch cry was, "We have got to be ruthless in order to get up to the top four and be within range of winning a premiership." And we never were ruthless. And that's the fact of the matter. We let people like Scott Thompson go rather easily. We weren't tough on a lot of players. We never had that ruthless streak that the Hawthorns had after their line in the sand game that made them such a great club for such a long time. And I think if you look at it, the way Melbourne handled Jack Watts, it's
Whispering, we're losing you a little bit. I might, Whispering, we just lost you for a bit there. What I might do is I might call you back on your mobile phone, and we'll continue that way, because a few times you have dropped out. So I'm gonna unceremoniously dump you there, and I'll give you a call back.
Cheerio.
All right, I'll call you back in a sec. All right, while we're getting Whispering back on the line. It'll probably play the call sounds. Hopefully he picks it up straight away. It doesn't leave me hanging.
Hello?
Hi, you're back.
I'm back.
All right, that's better. Maybe we'll keep it on the mobile. Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped off to sleep while I was ranting there.
Yeah. Well,
what did people hear?
I don't know. I tuned out when you started talking.
All right. I was just talking about being ruthless, which was the catch cry of Neil Danaher.
We heard that.
And I think this the way the club's dealt with Jack Watts, it's somewhat ruthless. Got a lot of people got their noses out of joint, and hopefully it'll pay dividends in 12 months' time, because I think the message is now sent to all and sundry that you really have to treat your football a little bit more seriously than not everything in life is footy. So that's my feeling. I wouldn't say that to junior kids, but once you get into the AFL system and you're elite, you've just got to strive for the top. It's not enough just to play football.
I agree. So, look, this isn't us bashing Jack Watts. I really like the guy, and I wish him all the best, and I thank him for the service that he did give us. He played during, for a terrible period for the club, and he at times gave it his all. So we wish him all the best. There were a lot of people sort of saying that perhaps because of Jack Watts leaving, that the the players, the rest of the playing group, aren't on board with the coach and the coaching staff anymore. Now, I just want to alert people to Christian Petrarca, as a Melbourne great referred to him last week. His Instagram photo. Petrarca posted a photo from, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen this on Instagram, but I think they're in New York at the moment. They were eating at a very nice establishment, Tao, downtown in New York. And
I've been there.
Yeah, you would have. A very nice Chinese, Asian fusion restaurant. Picture with Dom Tyson, Christian Petrarca, James Harms, some other bloke who must just be a mate, and Goody.
And I reckon there might have been a Buddha in the background.
I'm sure there was. And Christian Petrarca says, "Oi, Goody, put that on the club card." So they've gone out to dinner. It's quite an expensive restaurant as well, I might add.
Well, you know what this shows? This shows just how serious the split is within the club. That Goody has had to fly all the way over to New York and shout some of the boys to a very expensive dinner while begging them to stay at Melbourne, basically.
I like your
my reading of it.
I like your conspiracy theory. I'll take it one step further and have a look at the body language between Dom Tyson and Simon Goodwin, and it's not good at all. Dom Tyson's arms are crossed. He's not smiling.
Very closed.
Yeah. So
he might have had a dodgy dim sim.
He might have, but no. It's good that Goody's getting out there amongst the players and enjoying the off-season, and hopefully they come back and they're very focused on the task at hand.
Can I just say, I think the criticism, there's been a lot of criticism on Demonland of the way the club handled it, but I think they've handled it well. They've been ruthless, as Whispering said, but, there's two fundamental things here. One is you can't trade a player in secret. You can't do it behind closed doors. And two, you can't trade a popular player and a player who's got value without giving your supporters a reason for why you're doing it. And that's what the club did. And I think Marnie's communication and Peter Jackson on radio yesterday have spelled it out very clearly.
Do you think the fact that they came out and said, I'm not sure how it was worded, but they said something to the effect of, "We've told Jack to explore his options." What do you think of that as the way that was how they that came out, particularly in the media and then to the supporter base? Could they have handled that better, or is that the way?
No, I think that form of words is fine. I mean, I work in spin basically.
Yeah.
And there's no other way to spin this, and I think the words were fine. I don't think you can find fault with them. And I note that for all these people who are criticising the way the club, sort of managed it, no one's offered a viable alternative, narrative for how it might have unfolded. So. Yeah, I think that criticism is unfair.
Well, I can see from a lot of comments, particularly on the Demonland Facebook page when this was all going down, anytime we posted something that wasn't even Jack Watts related, we get 10s, 20s, 30s of comments saying, "Keep Jack Watts. I can't believe you're getting rid of Jack Watts." People confusing the Demonland account for the official account, saying, horrible things about what we're doing to Jack Watts. And there's people that don't understand maybe the situation and and they're just seeing it as how could they do this to the golden child of the club? They don't know anything else but he's the poster boy of the club and we're getting rid of him. I don't think there's any way to spin it to those people.
Well,
I can understand why they're angry.
Bagging him, which they didn't do. You've got to try and sort of make it sound like he's valued and loved and wanted.
Yeah.
But in truth, you're actually pushing him out the door. So you're sort of treading a bit of a balance in the words that you're limited in the words that you can use.
There was no way to spin it in a positive light. I think they just had to take the that hit, and there are still people who I can see on our Demonland Facebook that are saying they won't, because of that, they won't buy a membership next year, which to me is ludicrous. Like we've always said, the club is above the individual, and it's ludicrous to me. But there are people who have that feeling out there, and hopefully they come back when the success is there.
I wonder if the reaction might have been different if we would have received pick number 15 instead of 31. There are a lot of people feel that, or it goes back to this virtual love affair that we seem to have with early draft picks.
Well, obviously, to get pick 31, only get pick 31, we weren't going to get, I don't think anyone, certainly not Geelong. Port was the only team that seemed to be actively interested, and they were only willing to give 31. I don't think we could have got anything lower out of them. But then you have a look at Bryce Gibbs, who's 29 years old. He's only got a couple of years left, and look what he was able to get. And he's a number one draft pick, and he probably, maybe Adelaide paid a bit overs for that, but I think his worth is a lot more than Jack Watts.
Well, obviously, Carlton and Adelaide thought that, but if you have a look, Jack, and I don't want to demean him, but 13 Brownlow votes in 9 seasons. I don't know how many Bryce Gibbs got, but probably there were seasons when he got more than 13 in one season, and it could have been even last year. But he's certainly a midfielder who gets plenty of possessions, uses the ball almost as well as Jack Watts, he's retained his value.
Yep.
I was just trying to look up Bryce Gibbs' Brownlow votes. I think he got 11 this year.
Watts. It doesn't matter which side of the debate you're on. Everyone at some point is going to be able to say, I told you so. It's sometime over the next sort of 12 months, Melbourne will either stall or look like they're going backwards. We might have a game where we kick, 10 goals, 25, and everyone will say Melbourne shouldn't have got rid of Jack Watts. It was a mistake. And then in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, when we win a flag, someone like Dermot Brereton or David King will write an article and say the seeds of this premiership were sown when Melbourne moved on Jack Watts. So I can foresee both of those things happening in the future.
Yep, from your lips to Alan Jakovic's ears. Bryce Gibbs has had 80 career Brownlow votes. But he is a midfielder, and they do play in different positions, so it's not exactly a fair comparison.
And he's older than Watts.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, and someone did point out that I think Jesse Hogan already in his 50 games, that's a third of Jack Watts' career, and it's certainly been an interrupted career on Jesse's part, has already got 14 Brownlow votes. So there's a comparison.
It is. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for that, Demonland. All right, well, we might move on from Jack. Hopefully it's not he proves us wrong. And I wish him all the best at Port, but I certainly don't want to regret that. But good luck to Jack in his new colours. And I've got no ill feeling towards him. I don't. There's no way he'd get booed if he came to the G. I certainly wouldn't. So, yep. But then again, he didn't really leave us. So, you can't blame him. Now we gave up pick 66 for Harley Balic. I think that's a good move. if he can find that, his form in, from the what's that competition, the TAC Cup? Is that what it's still called?
Yep. Played for Sandringham Dragons.
Yep. Well, Whispering, you would know about him. Can you give us a bit of a insight into him, you being our draft maven?
Well, in his last year, which is only a couple of years ago, to 2015, he started off. I think the first half of that season was regarded as a top 10, top 20 pick, maybe. He's a midfielder, basketball background, very highly thought of, and then he started getting injuries late in that year, and he slid right down to 38, and he was unlucky enough to be picked up by Fremantle. And for a boy that had a close family, it was a bit hard. His first season in WA, he was basically recuperating from another wrist injury. So you could imagine it'd be pretty tough on a young kid, taken at the age of 18 or 19, living interstate, not really being part of a club in terms of going to training. So,
yeah, I heard that he not only was he recuperating from an injury, but the first surgery that he had was a botched surgery or something to that effect, that it wasn't done properly, and he had to have another surgery to repair that surgery. So I remember just reading that. So I'm sure that that certainly didn't help. And what do you think about the whole go home factor? Do you think once he's home that aspect of it, how tough do you think that is on a player? And does that show other weaknesses? Is it a bad sign, or once he's home, all that'll be forgotten?
Well, in the case of Balic, certainly we hope it's going to help. Let's not forget that early this year he played a few games, including one against Melbourne, in which he was very impressive. He kicked a goal and played very well, and that game possibly cost Melbourne a place in the top 8. So,
well, that goal, certainly, if he hadn't kicked that goal, we would have made the top 8.
That's it. So
no, there's another 3 points on top of
that. No, but we would have, if he
we
didn't
can just get those extra 3 points,
we would have
gotten rid of Balic, and we will make the finals.
No, we would have had that. If he hadn't kicked that goal, we would have had an extra win, meaning we'd be in the finals. So that's what I mean. Percentage would not have mattered.
And unceremoniously dumped in the first game, probably, by the Swans, who went on to beat Essendon by about 80 points. And I think we might have suffered the same fate. Because
we deserved to be thrashed that day, not Essendon.
Well, that's right. It would have been a wonderful thrashing.
So I'm looking
but as you
forward
say,
to
pick 66, very low risk. If it comes off, great. What you'd be hoping for is, the kind of season that sort of Mitch Hannon had, sort of just Hannon kind of came out of the blue, really. Debuted round 1 and was hardly out of the side after that. So you sort of hope that Balic can sort of make the same kind of quick impact, injury and fitness permitting.
Yeah,
all right, but Mitch Hannon was pick 46, not 66. There's a big difference. Has anyone on Demon Lane complained about losing 66?
Not yet. Not until pick 66 wins a Norm Smith medal for Fremantle.
Well, anyone know last year Fremantle actually did have pick 66, so they picked up Luke Ryan from Coburg. And no doubt he'll probably be back at Coburg pretty soon.
Yeah. He's not homesick, is he?
Well, I don't know.
All right, if anyone wants to give us a call and talk about Jack Watts, Jake Lever, Harley, 0390163666, that's 0390163666, or Skype us, Demonland31. Would love to hear your thoughts. People definitely have a lot to say on the forum and on Facebook, so it'd be lovely to hear your voice and put a voice to a screen name. Now we've got coming up next week on Tuesday the full draw will be released. What are your wishes, Grapeviney? What do you want to see in that draw? If you could have 3-5 wishes, what would you like?
First one would be a game against Collingwood in round 1.
Yep.
On the Saturday, perhaps.
To atone for the final round.
Well, one, to atone for the final round, but mainly as a return fixture on QB.
Yep.
And then you have, sort of gate sharing, I suppose, over the 2 games, and to get that locked in, because that would then give us effectively 2 blockbusters in the first month.
Yep.
Once you take into account the Richmond Anzac Eve game, which was on a Tuesday this year, next year. So
seems like that's being locked in as well.
Yep. So to open up the season with 2, 75,000 plus crowds would be great. We want, and this shouldn't even be a request, but given we got lumped with it last year, we don't want 5-6 day breaks in a row again.
Yeah, I think they would have made that clear. You would think.
Yeah. Ideally, you'd get the bye after the Darwin game, but I'm sure the club has requested that each and every year, and we don't seem to get it. So that'd be my key requests, and a home game against Essendon, which we haven't seemed to have had for years. And
it would be nice to get at least 2 Friday night games. One of them definitely a home game would be nice. I reckon we'll end up playing an interstate one.
That's pretty good, isn't it? 2 Friday nighters and then Queen's Birthday and Anzac Eve. I
like your thinking in regards to locking in a Collingwood round 1 going forward. They don't have anyone that they play round 1. No, they're not. You got the Carlton Richmond that starts the thing. Geelong usually play Hawthorn on the Sunday. Sometimes they do a derby or something like that. Not always, but it'd be nice to have another big Victorian game, and I'd like to lock in against Collingwood, because you wouldn't think they'd do Essendon and Collingwood because they play each other a few weeks later with Anzac. So it makes sense to us to play Collingwood, and then, it'd be good to finally play in front of a 70,000 plus crowd in the round 1 rather than play Brisbane at the G or something and have 20,000 people there. So yeah, I'm all for that. Whispering, what are your any other key wishes for you?
Well, I'd like to have as good a draw as Richmond had this year, but they finished in the bottom 6 in 2016, so they're entitled to that easier draw. We finished in the middle 6, so we'll get a mixture. I think I'd like to play North Melbourne twice, because sooner or later we've got to crack the hoodoo. So I'd like to have two shots at it again. Yes, I do like the idea of playing Collingwood in round 1. Particularly, they might put it up against, apparently, North Melbourne are playing the Gold Coast Suns in Townsville, which should be an absolute blockbuster.
There'll be dozens of people at that game.
I think they're hiding them.
I reckon there'll be more cane toads than people, but nevertheless, it's a good way to stitch up 2 clubs by both of them not having to play in front of home crowds.
We've got a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to the Demonland podcast.
Yes, hello?
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, it's Demon77. How are you guys?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good.
What would you like to talk about?
So the phone's just breaking up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What would you like to talk about?
Well, first of all, congratulations on all your hard work.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just with Jack Watts, we obviously have to move on. Sad to see him go. But just wanted your thoughts. In which way do you think Port would utilise him? We know his greatest asset is his kicking skills. Now, with Trengove and Lobe being moved on, do you see him as a backup ruckman to Ryder at all and using him through the middle of the ground in patches? Because, I mean, they do have a lot of options going forward. They've got plenty of goal kickers. Which way do you see him playing at Port?
Interesting. Grapevine, you want to take that one?
Well, I hadn't analysed it at all. In a way, and I'm not disrespecting your question, Demon 77, but I couldn't care what he does at Port, really, or how they use him. Look, he did pretty well, and he's been doing giving Max a chop out in the ruck for a couple of years now. There's some sort of myth on Demonland that he only went into the ruck when Max went down this year, but if you cast your mind back last year...
He was doing it all last year.
He was doing it all last year, and that's how good he started off 2017 too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they, if they utilise him in that role, but I'd imagine he'd be sort of playing that high half-forward role that he did at Melbourne, without knowing too much about, the way sort of Port's set up. As you say, though, they've got lots of options forward, so it'll be interesting.
Where do you, Demon 77? What do you think?
Yeah, with all the talk that Port were just about the only ones that were showing interest in him, but wanted to know in what role they would use him in, and like we said, his kicking's elite. So maybe through the middle of the ground in patches while Ryder's off the ground, I guess, and then roll forward, he can do some damage. But, sad to see him go. I wish him well. But as you've seen the discussion on Demonland, there's varying opinions on him. But what do? You've got to move on. And those people ringing up the radio station and, threatening not to renew memberships, we're all passionate. We all react differently. I guess with time, everyone will move on. But, the club is looking, it's got a bright future, so we all need to jump on board and stick fat. We stuck fat during those bad times. We were winning 2 games a year.
Yeah.
I think that's much worse than what's happened in this situation,
That's it. Get on board and enjoy the ride.
So...
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Just another point.
Sure.
In regards to that Peter Jackson interview on SEN yesterday, the gentleman were talking earlier about our possible round 1 fixture.
Yes.
I thought I heard him say that he wasn't entirely convinced that the AFL would approve Collingwood's request to play us round 1, and he was sort of indicating that we might be playing a home game round 1 against a Victorian club. That's how I think the interview finished off. So, it'd be interesting to hear what team we will get, because North's out of the question with them playing up at Cairns. Carlton and Richmond are out of the question as well. If they deny the Collingwood request, who would that leave? Maybe Essendon or a Bulldog?
I think the idea with Essendon is that we play them the week after the Anzac match, because they are also on a short week. So it makes sense to have the two. And Richmond would play Collingwood the next week. So you've effectively got all the teams playing on a short week playing against each other, so that there's no real disadvantage there. So it just seems logical that the AFL would go for a big drawing fixture, such as Melbourne, Collingwood in round 1. So
what's the reason we can't play Collingwood as a home game? Oh no, because we're playing. Is it our home game?
Yeah, Queen's Birthday's our home.
No, but I thought, wasn't there didn't Eddie sort of want that changed, or are we still locked into that home game?
Well, you can do it 2 ways. You can either each have a home game, or you can share the gate from both games. So,
but are we, for 2018, are we locked in? Is that our home game? Like, what's the...
No, well, I don't think it's been decided.
So we could play...
So,
it could be our home game, round 1, against them.
And then Queen's Birthday is theirs.
Yeah. Why is that? That's not so far-fetched. I understand if we were locked in as our home game, Queen's Birthday, but it's not locked in.
And wouldn't it be good to see Collingwood wearing their reverse strip as their away side?
Is that not a joke? Is there?
Well, Richmond won a premiership in their canary yellow, so
And they embraced it.
Anything's possible.
They seem to embrace it, so all power to them. Demon 77. Is there anything else? Any wishes for the draw for you that we haven't covered?
Oh, what that point that you just brought up with us being the home team in round one doesn't sound too bad. If we're going to split the gates, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah.
Do we still? Are we still going to be doing the MND thing, or that could be shared by either team as a home team, I suppose, or not?
I don't think it matters whose the home game is. They'd be on board to assist that and host that for the day. I can't see that being an issue.
Yeah.
I think that's very important that we continue to do that. It's a great fundraiser for them. They've raised a lot of money, so I can't see. Eddie Maguire would keep that going. I'm sure.
Yeah, especially to get his face on television, which he just loves. But I've got a question. For Demon 77.
Sure.
Yes.
The 77. I seem to remember Melbourne in 1977 had a pretty poor year. They finished second last. Are you celebrating 1977 for some reason?
I would say you're born in 1977, is my guess.
Yes, that's my year of birth, yes, correct.
Right, okay. Well, I suffered during that year because we only won 5 games and the only team we finished ahead of was St Kilda. And, it was a tough time for Melbourne supporters around that era.
Yes, my mother certainly suffered twice that year, but I think one was a blessing, the other one.
Yeah, so there you go.
Very good.
Just part of Melbourne history, there you go.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Is there anything else, Demon 77?
No, that's all for tonight. I appreciate it for having me on, guys, and taking my call.
Anytime, buddy. All right, thank you.
Great to have you.
Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, bye.
Always great to hear from other Demon Landers. If you want to give us a call, 0390163666, or you can Skype us Demonland31. So 0390163666. We've got about 65 people listening at the moment live. So if you want to give us a call, let us know what you think about anything, the draw, Jack Watts, Jake Cleaver, anything else you want to talk about. Now, Whispering,
do you reckon one of those 65 is Alan Jakovic? Because he did say that he was a fan of the show. So I'm going to assume that he is listening.
Yes.
So shout out to Jacko. Good to have you with us again, mate.
Yeah. Very good. If you're Jacko, you want to call in 039016. Well, he did say he wants to come back on later in the year. I'm all for that. I actually spoke to him the day after the podcast, and he said that again, that he'd be happy to come back on. So yeah, we'll take him up on that.
And wasn't that fantastic that just a great personality of the Melbourne Football Club is humble enough to ring you and thank you for the opportunity to be on the program. I think the reverse really applied to the thousands of Demon fans who listened to the podcast and read the articles written by people on the AFL site, for instance, and spoke about it on SEN. It was terrific. And perhaps it was very timely for the Melbourne Football Club that we were talking about Alan Jakovic and distracting ourselves from the Jack Watts situation. So it was probably a good thing.
Yeah, and Jacko did say he'd love to come back if we're in a grand final. So and I must say, the Footy Club, their official Twitter and their Facebook page also sort of linked to that article on afl.com.au. I think the Facebook page said something about the man, the myth, the legend returns, and they credited Demonland. So I was very happy that the official club sort of acknowledged us. And people in those, in the comments section of the Melbourne Facebook were all sort of imploring Melbourne to get Jacko on board, get him involved some way, and I don't know if he'd be up for that. He seems like he's a private person. One of his reasons for coming on was so that he could sort of tell the story and sort of, get it all out there and then sort of, fade back into obscurity. But it was, it'd be great if we could get him back to the club in some way, even if just for a one-off.
Maybe we could, taking our cues from the Carlton hovercraft, have some kind of boat float before the game, and he could sort of be fishing off the back of it or something like that as it zooms its way around the MCG.
Yeah, I'd like that. I'm sure a lot of other fans would like that. But there was I don't know if there's anyone else at any other club, or even from the D's, that could generate the response. And maybe it's because he was out of the limelight for so long. Perhaps an Ablett, Gary Ablett Senior, would get that if he came out. But you still see Gary Ablett sort of out there every now and again, watching at the footy, watching his son, but he doesn't go in the media much. But all other legends, or, and I don't know whether Jacko's a legend or not, considered a legend, but they're all still out there in the media. The Dunstalls, you even see Lockett these days has sort of had a bit of a comeback. Lockett's pretty private too.
Yeah. And you're right, he's been back out recently, but it was a fair while in between sort of drinks for him, I think.
Yeah, so
in terms of being in the public eye.
But there's not many other players,
No, the rest of them are all in the media. Every second player and his dog's in the media these days, so it's unusual to have a champion like that turns their back on it.
And look, the majority of footballers who end their football careers, the majority of them you never do hear from them again. But they didn't have that same spark that Jacko had while he played. The amount of goals that he kicked in such a short time, the flair that he did it in. If you've watched any of his highlights on YouTube, just incredible. So. I still can't believe we got to speak to him, that's we can retire now.
Yep.
Anything else, gentlemen? We got the draft coming up in a month's time. There's not much else happening. When do the boys start back training?
Yeah, 6th of November, according to reports. So that will no doubt be first, second and third year players. I think it's restricted to, and then the older players come along a week or two later. And of course there'll be a few who won't be at pre-season. I think Jack Viney's going to miss most of this side of Christmas following his injury. But he's such a determined person that I can imagine that once he does get on the training track, he'll make up for lost time.
At least he's not in a moonbird anymore. That's promising.
Yeah, well, I think if there was one factor that possibly cost us a place in the finals, it was losing him for much of the last two-thirds of the season. I know he played one or two games, but he was an enormous loss. When you consider that the difference was 2 goals, I'm sure Jack Viney would have made up those 2 goals and more, and in fact might have inspired us to actually thrash teams like St Kilda and Brisbane instead of allow them to reel us in, which was really what cost us a place in the finals in the end. And of course, that Collingwood game that we'll avenge in round 1.
Well, hopefully we get that. So 6th of November, you can follow all training reports on Demonland. We usually have someone of the faithful down there reporting back to everyone. So if you're listening to this podcast, from the 6th of November, get to demonland.com for your bi-weekly training reports. And
if you've got a grey beard and you've got a scooter, get yourself down and do a report. And
Yeah.
I think everyone knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think so. Usually someone's down there with a camera, and usually someone snaps a few pictures. Everyone's got a mobile phone these days, so yep, get down to demonland.com.
666 takes some good pics down there, doesn't he? I think
it's great.
Usually.
It's great seeing the pre-season photos. Everyone's looking fit and terrific at that time of year. So
except for Dean Kent.
And a couple of other players looking a bit seedy, having gone to nightclubs the night before, but we won't name names. And they may not be there this
Cam
year.
Peterson and Clayton Oliver also came back in not great shape last year, but both righted the situation very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I hope, everyone, once they come back, they're all focused and ready for the task at hand. We've got a lot of avenging to do, and, I think we're all owed as supporters, to go a little bit further.
I think we should say in Cam Pedersen's defence, I think he had an operation at the end of last season, and because I can seem to remember him at the best and fairest with his arm in a sling, so he probably had an excuse for not being in full shape, partial excuse. Clayton Oliver didn't, but look at the season he had. Hopefully he's going to, or he is already treating the off-season with a bit more respect than last year, and he's going to come back and have an even better season in 2018.
Well, I'm not sure if you follow Clayton Oliver on Instagram.
He's in Fiji with his girlfriend.
Yes, so he's in Fiji. He was on the beach somewhere, and he said, despite the fact that he used sunscreen, he covered himself in a towel, he did everything. He was under an umbrella, everything. This still happened, and he showed a picture of himself, and his legs were red raw. Yeah.
You'd think he'd know how to deal with the sun by now, wouldn't you? But if the worst thing that he comes back with is a case of sunburn, then we can accept that. I think. Well, I think he'll maintain the standards that he obviously sort of set after that early hiccup. I can't see him regressing.
Yeah, neither can I. If the worst thing is a sunburn, then But you know what? I think for him, perhaps a tropical holiday is not for him, not for his complexion. But can't wait to see him play next year. All right, fellas. I think that's all. Unless you have something else you want to say, Whispering.
Well, no, not really. Hopefully we'll be back again around draft time. I don't know if we're going to do something pre-draft.
Well, that's up to you. If you're prepared, I certainly don't know anything about the crop of players, but if you're prepared, I'm happy to get on with you. And you can give us a bit of a primer, a phantom draft probably. Couple of the names of players that'll be around.
I don't have
a
lot to contribute to that discussion either, but it'd be nice if we had some of our draft watchers like Pennant, St D in WA and Chaser J could join in. I know they also pay attention to those leagues.
All right, or perhaps Jason Taylor could get up and tell us who he's going to pick actually, because it's pretty difficult when you've got picks 29, 31 and 36 and 47 or something of that nature to make an exact prediction, particularly in this draft. It seems to me that there's probably 8 to 10 really top players who stand out, and that's usually the case. And then after that, anyone can go from about 11 to 35, and I guess it'll be a feather in Jason Taylor's cap if he can pick some ready-made players out of that group. And I'm not even sure that we definitely need ready-made players, because we've got a pretty strong list as it is, and 3 or 4 blokes getting 12 months experience at Casey is not going to hurt. It's going to build up the depths of your reserves, and they'll be ready to come in a year or two's time. I see a lot of the lowly sides that are so dependent on early picks being just right. They end up struggling, as Melbourne did over that period of probably 2005-06 right through to just a couple of years ago, when we were so dependent on these high draft picks, and it's entered the psyche of the club, and I think it's partially the reason why there was so much criticism of the lever deals and the Watts deals, people talking about paying overs and getting unders. I think that's just wrong.
Yep.
Can you see what do you think we'll be targeting? What position do you think we'll be going for another ruck or a key position, or you think we're going to stick with the midfield runners?
Runners out. I think we're looking for an outside runner. I guess we're all looking for players who can kick accurately.
Didn't we have one? Too soon.
But look, I just think players will have a dip. Hard types, natural footballers, irrespective of the size, and maybe we might get one of these rare gems as other clubs do, and it's not unheard of. Some of the better players of recent years have been picks in the 20s to 30s, so who knows?
Yep, we'll be looking forward. So I think, maybe we will see if we can put something together pre-draft and certainly post-draft, and that's when we'll be back. We'll be back. When is the draft? Is it late November?
Yeah, 24th of November.
All right, we'll be back definitely before then, unless something pressing happens before that. Thank you for joining us, Grapeviney and Whispering Jack.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking with you.
Yes.
Yes, as I said, we'll be back. You can find us demonland.com, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.